Kia ora koutou, welcome everyone. I'm Janice Mackay, your host, and I'm the Welcoming Communities Advisor for Ashburton District Council. I warmly welcome you along with our panellists today, Roger Farr, the General Manager of the Ashburton Trust Event Centre, and Bevan Rickaby, Economic Development Manager from Ashburton District Council. Today, Roger will share a timely update to discuss exactly what Level 1 means for event organisers and industry insights into holding and hosting great events that keep your attendees safe. Whether you are organising a business event, public performance, outdoor event, amongst others, Roger is here to share what to look for in an event location for hygiene standards and contact tracing. He'll also share advice from Hospitality NZ for events that involve food and beverage. Bevan will be posting questions that have come through our inbox in advance of this webinar. But for questions during the live webinar, feel free to send your questions to the panellists using the Q&A box below and not the chat box, so we can keep track of them more easily. If you'd like to watch this webinar again or share it with others, it is being recorded and will be made available on the Ashburton District Council's YouTube channel. All right, I will hand it over to you, Roger and Bevan.
Thank you.
Hey, Roger, what's been happening? I would say that yesterday was a huge relief for event people.
Absolutely, like the announcement yesterday couldn't have come soon enough, really. It's been a long period of no activity basically in the event industry, and you know, basically due to the lag and the way the industry works as far as events goes, it's possibly going to be another 3 months before we can honestly say that we're back up and fully running. But at least the announcement yesterday gives us the ability to plan ahead, and we're already starting to see promoters, you know, jump on the or push the start button and you know, confirm events going forward. So, you know, I couldn't be more happy about what's happening. It's, you know, like sun's come up again.
And I think here in Ashburton too, Roger, we're very lucky to have such a centre such as yourself. So you can do small events, you can do the large events in the major auditorium, and that's going to be, I think, a bit of an advantage now that we've gone to level 1. For anyone out there that may have missed that, and you know, for all intents and purposes, Roger, overall, can you just give us a bit of an overview of what this means for events now that we're at alert level 1?
So basically now with alert level 1, there's absolutely no restrictions. There's no legal requirements, and basically from here on in, it's up to the promoter to provide a safe venue and, you know, a safe environment for people to come into. I guess now health and safety takes over a fair bit from what the legal requirements were during the lockdown period, and anybody looking at holding an event needs to have that sort of health and safety planning in place to manage the health of the people coming to the venues or coming to their events. And that's basically all done through careful planning. You know, health and safety now is a huge part of any organising any event, and so from here on in, you know, it's very important that people recognise that the COVID crisis has been, well, it's there and still exists, and, you know, there needs to be planning in place now for addressing how that's managed during the event, and that's from, you know, your hand sanitizer, your contact tracing methods. They're probably the two main ones that you now need to have firmly entrenched into your health and safety documentation, and, you know, utilised during your event. So there's that's probably going to be the main thing going forward from here, is instilling a sense of compliance, where, you know, your customers coming in can feel that you have got everything under control, and you know, it's a safe environment to come into.
So when you have a public event, and not just your public events, and you might just talk about how you can help other event organisers as well. But can public events get QR codes, and how does this work, and how do they get one if anyone can get one?
Yeah, there's a lot of options out there for the QR code. We've gone with the government recommended coding. It does require that you have a business number, which is probably one of the drawbacks at the moment. And I heard yesterday that the government's talking about being able to sidestep that a bit. If you apply to them directly, they'll provide you with a Q code without the need for the business number. So that is probably a bit of an issue for any event that's just setting up as a one-off and hasn't actually established themselves as a business. But I think the QR code or the contact tracing through scanning in that system is ideal. I think going forward, the last thing we want to do as an industry is create barriers for people coming to your venue. And if it's too difficult for them to do the contact tracing scenario, it's just another barrier and for them not to want to come. And making it as easy as possible is, I think for us ourselves, the age group that we tend to market to, a lot of them don't have the phone capability to do this contact tracing through their phone. So we will still have the ability to sign in with a pen and paper. The other thing with our industry also is generally coming to our venue, you're buying a ticket for a seat. So there's immediately the ability to look at who's in the venue and get a report. We know exactly where you sat, and the ability to contact trace from your ticket sale will be our lifeline basically. But for yourself coming to the venue or coming to an event, I think the QR code is going to be, the lifeline that you need to, create that ability, or the ability for the people to contact trace.
Yeah, I was in Dunedin last weekend. I went to the farmers market down there, and they're probably a little bit luckier than some of the markets we have around here because they have specific entrances. So, I saw they had 3 different QR codes, but they could control the people coming in. So
yeah.
I think you've started to cover it, but it's going to be difficult in the initial stages. And so maybe you've got some extended advice where public can come at a market from any angle and not necessarily through a one gate. How store holders would be best to cover that off, just to make people happy.
Yeah, I think for store holders, again, like there's so many different apps out there, and I'm not sure how the government's going to make this work because there are so many, but it's quite simple for a stall holder to find an app that works for them and have that QR code on their stall. It doesn't need to be one QR code for that whole market. It's really, I think for the people themselves, it's basically a diary that you're keeping, and just something that can acknowledge that you were in a certain location at a certain time is all that's needed.
Yeah. Although people are saying that now we're at alert level 1, that it's business as usual. It's still really business as unusual in certain ways, and they still need to make sure that that they have some of these things in place. So talking about markets and maybe even events at your event centre, are there any restrictions on the service of food and or beverage now?
No, that pretty much goes back to the way it was. Again, there's definitely legal requirements there for handling food. They still all exist, and nothing that's being put in place from here on overrides any of those legal requirements as far as food handling and food and beverage. So what's happening at the moment through our industry is we're developing, or the industry has developed alongside MBIE, a code of practice. And within that document, there's recommendations being made for how the venues should operate. And again, it's trying to instill a sense of confidence with the public that, you know, the venues are doing as much as they can to satisfy, you know, the health and safety requirements and make them feel safe coming to the venue. You know, that information, while it's targeted towards venues, and, you know, this is from venues the size of Eden Park down to us and even smaller, you know, they're trying to get all the venues to adopt this practice. And again, it's not a legal requirement, but it's you know, it's a recommended practice for venues going forward. And I think that sort of thing there is the best thing that, you know, our industry can do going forward to try and alleviate any concerns that the public may have.
There seems to be ongoing conversations around using gloves and masks, and I don't think there's anyone come up with a total answer on that. Although I was watching one of the experts from Otago University last night, and he still seems to think that we should have masks on aeroplanes and, you know, on public transports. But is the need for event staff and volunteers to wear gloves and masks, in your opinion?
No, not now, I don't think. Like, I think the risk now is so low that I don't see it being a necessity. What we are looking at doing now is using technology again to try and alleviate the handling side of tickets, cash, that sort of thing. So we're going to a ticket scanning model. It's something that we've been trialling prior to lockdown. So basically now, rather than having the ushers on the door having to handle tickets and that sort of thing, it'll be just a scanned ticket that you use to go into the auditorium. Same with cash. You know, we're probably a bit slow on the uptake, but we're now moving to PayWaves transactions. So that'll, the advantages with that, you know, there's the fact that you're not handling somebody else's credit cards or whatever, but you're also, you know, speeding up the delivery of the service, especially at the bar. I don't know if you've ever been to the bar at half time. You know, you've got 20 minutes to serve 500 people, and the longest period is waiting for them to pay for their purchase. The whole PayWave thing will actually benefit us, you know, in a number of ways going forward.
So let's come back to that, because that's some of those compliance costs that, you know, business and markets and events always talk about. Are the banks still being a bit tough on PayWave, that there's you know, extra charge from an event organiser's point of view, or are they sort of being a little bit more lenient around that?
They are for a period of a month. So I think it's one of those things where, you know, you can't look at the cost as being like it's going to be a cost that's going forward. You've got to carry that cost forward and, you know, say it's for the, you know, benefit of not just this period, but further down the track as well. And just, you know, those costs will naturally have to be built into, you know, what our running costs, you know, charges are. But, you know, I think it's a necessity rather than, you know, a nice to have, you know, now. It's again part of that package of, you know, giving the public confidence to come back into mass gatherings.
Yeah, I certainly noticed that recently. Well, it's not that recent now, because but around Christmas time when we visited Australia, you know, everyone has PayWave now.
Yeah.
I don't think I put my credit card into one. So I think that's one thing that organisers are just going to have a look at, talk with their banks, and see what they can do as far as PayWave's concerned, because I noticed out and about over the weekend, people are a little reluctant to you know, to touch anything. I even noticed along the main street someone looking at money machine, just sort of standing there looking at for a minute, thinking, now, will I just go into the bank or will I use the money machine? So I think that's a fair comment, that if you do have EFTPOS machines, you don't rely on cash. I think it's just going to be one of those norms that just going to have the PayWave. So I suppose there's still going to be a little bit of anxiety, crowd anxiety for people as they come out of the lockdown and then through the level 2 that we've been through. And it's again, as I said before, it's business as unusual, but from a people perspective, we are a handshake, like to have a bit of a hug, like to sit next to people, have a bit of a chat. So when they come along to the venues now, I think you said, are just going to be normal. So you're just going to be able to sit as you've sat always. But do you think that there's going to be a little bit of that anxiety inside?
I think, yeah, initially I think there will be. You go into a crowd now and you hear someone sneeze or cough and you sort of think to yourself, well, is that the start of it? Or so there's always going to be that anxiety there for a wee while, I think. As far as being in the venue itself, we've certainly stepped up our cleaning procedures. We've always had very good ones, but now you go the extra mile. All the hand rests on the seats will be wiped down before and after a show. And it's just those extra little steps that you take now to try and alleviate those fears. There's not a lot more you can do than that. It's going to be people's perception of your venue and how clean it looks from the outside, the steps that you put in place as they come into the venue, and what your staff are doing to assist them. During level 3, we had put together a packet or a plan where we were going to segregate the audience and have spacing between seats. So that planning has been put in place. We don't, at level 1, we're not intending on going to that level of compliance. From the here on, I think it's quite acceptable to have the ability to sell the full 500 seats in the auditorium. We can still, for the business meetings and that sort of thing, we can certainly adjust seating there to allow for greater spacing between individuals. But yeah, it is all about from here on trying to alleviate those concerns by adopting practices basically that people can look at and say, well, this feels like a nice clean venue to come into, or if it's an outdoor event, maybe you could look at doing segregated areas, like if you take, for example, the Christmas in the Park type thing in the Domain, maybe you look at segregating the field and people can say, well, I was in area 1A or 2B or 3C, and that just becomes part of your contact tracing ability later on. And it's that sort of thing, quite simple steps that you can think of, put in place, and it sort of leans towards people seeing that you have put thought into trying to manage the situation.
So we're now in level 1, and I think we're all interested in getting out and seeing some events. What's coming up, Roger? Is there events booked? We're going to see one every week in the event centre, or are we taking our time a little bit on getting going?
We're taking a slow as you go approach at the moment. We have got events coming up. Our first one's not till July, which is we've targeted as being a kids event. Again, the kids have been looked at as being low risk. So again, we're looking at bringing in some kids entertainment, Kitchen Chaos, which is a comedy, and it's sort of aimed at that sort of 5 to maybe 10, 11, 12 age group. And the last time we had them here, they were very popular. We'll be doing it as a cushion theatre, so you bring along your own cushion. It's in the foyer. You can sit wherever you like. There's no, you're not sitting next to each other in seated positions. So it's just a fun day out for the kids and trying to get them back into something that's more normal. I think most of them probably, their age group, don't understand what they've probably just been through. It's probably felt more like a holiday than any sort of restriction. But I think for them now, trying to create something that's more normal is quite essential.
Certainly is. And so the major events, then you're saying that starting in July, you think it's going to be a little bit further down the track before we start seeing major events come through Ashburton?
Yeah, look, at the moment, we're planning September as being a relaunch month for us. We've got 4 quite large events coming through in September. And at the moment, we're just in the process of planning how we go about doing that. We're sort of thinking it basically like we did for the opening of the venue, a complete, a relaunch aspect, so to speak. Red carpets is one of them we're looking at doing as a semi-formal night with drinks. It's quite a major show that's been put together. I think one thing with the whole COVID lockdown, it's made people think outside the square. So we've got 3 organisations who wouldn't normally promote shows, are actually more technical based organisations. There's a lighting company, an audio visual company and a sound company all got together, and they've put together a show that they're going to tour. It's I'm not allowed to give away too many details at the moment because it's yet to be marketed, but it's going to be a stunning night. Because a lot of the overseas performers have come home to New Zealand for the lockdown. New Zealand's in a very lucky position at the moment where a lot of those performers that used to perform on West End Broadway are sitting in New Zealand looking for something to do. So these guys have managed to secure some very big names from overseas, and they're going to tour New Zealand with a show that's complimentary type show based on all your favourite songs from musicals. And it's quite spectacular what they're planning. You can imagine a lighting company and a sound company and an audio visual company with gear sitting in shed doing nothing. Their intentions is to throw everything at it, and it'll be quite a spectacular show.
Yeah. So what I'm getting from you, and I'd like a comment, please, is we should be confident to hold big and start organising big community events such as Christmas in the Park, Multicultural Bite, the type of thing like Waitangi on East, Boulevard Day. We should be quite confident to start organising those events now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't see there's any necessity to restrict from here on. I think the big thing is planning, and you plan to succeed, and you've just got to put in place policies that cover off all those extra little details that you need to be thinking about there, as far as the contact tracing, hand sanitising, hygiene. If you've got outside food vendors coming in, finding out from them what their policies are, what they're doing to address the concerns that the public will have, and very detailed planning is what's needed.
And use local first.
Absolutely.
So I'll just touch on that, the hand sanitizer. So say, for example, at a market, you would suggest that each of the store holders actually have a hand sanitizer available. And I'm not sure anymore whether it's just as a precaution. I think we probably should have always been doing it. But when you've got lots of people handling products on your store, just to have that hand sanitizer available. Yeah,
like it's a minimal cost at the end of the day to create that assurance for the public coming in. I think most people now walk into a store and look for the sanitizer. So I think if you haven't got it, you're probably going to be noticed more for not having it than having it. And whether the people use it or not is up to them. Again, there's no legal requirement, but it's creating that atmosphere assurance for the public.
Now, Roger, I know you're going to be busy trying to get your event centre up and running, but you are probably part of some nationwide organisations. Can you talk a little bit about who they are and how people can get some information, and maybe even will you have the time to be able to talk to people if they require some help?
Absolutely. Like we deal with Avene, which is the Entertainment Venue Association of New Zealand. It's a very good organisation. They have, they cover venues from the size of Eden Park right down to us guys and even smaller. So they're very well versed with all the policies that have been put in place. They were part of the panel that put together the COVID compliance schedule, which we've just received this morning. I've had a brief look at it, and it's not overly, as far as complying with it, there's nothing in there that we are concerned about. It's quite simple measures that we can put in place. So yeah, anyone that's looking at holding an event, I'm more than happy to talk to them. There's a lot of information there that we can pass on, and I'm more than happy to do that. And it's, I think as far as the community goes, the essential thing now is getting some of these activities back up and running in a safe environment. And if we can be part of helping the community make that happen, I'm more than happy.
So we're running a big community event. It's held out on the street. There's no proper entrance or exit. I think we touched on it before, but can you give some advice? Just had a question here, how we can properly implement contact tracing.
Again, there's no you're not compelled to make people follow these contact tracing methods. All you have to be doing is have that facility there for them to use. You can't physically make them line up and sign in anymore. But having that ability there for them to do it is, I think, again, your way of showing that you're doing everything you can to make the event safe for them to come into. It's going to be physically impossible for a market type situation for them to, for you to have everybody sign in. And again, because we're in level 1, there's not actually a legal requirement for that to happen.
Yep, and it's going to be a bit like that with, if you go to an event these days, you see a big sign that says FPOS machine, so that's where you go to the FPOS. Maybe it's the same sort of thing. It's just a little booth that has the code there pinned up so that people go to if they wish. Yeah.
I think you've got to look at it, and I think you can probably, even in a market situation, you can probably identify half a dozen areas where people are likely to come from, and have your contact tracing area or hand sanitizers based in those positions. You're not going to be able to cover off every area, but look at it from a practical point of view and say, well, this is where 80% of our people are going to come from. Let's address those areas, and then even if you put a couple of random ones in elsewhere, you're satisfying that need.
Yeah. Okay. So we're probably coming close to the end of it. There was some really good questions that we received prior to it, and we've worked our way through that. I think there's quite a bit of excitement out there about getting back out to get to events, get down to your local club or get down to your local bar or favourite restaurant. From our point of view, Mid Canterbury now is totally open for business, and what we need people to do is to try and shop and go to local events to support them, to get them up and running. Your organisation obviously is one of those that are key to events and people who actually run events. So thank you very much for your time, Roger. Just as a wrap up, what you've said, and I'll make sure that I've got it right, that pretty much any event can now actually go ahead, take extra precautions around making sure you've got the necessary sanitary requirements taken care of. If you can get the QR code so that people can do that contact tracing, or have it in a paper form, but there is no legal requirement that you have to actually have that contact tracing. It's down to the individual to make sure that they keep a diary, as you rightly pointed out, about where they've been. And we have a number of good events coming up, and Boulevard Day is on its way, and multicultural bite, and we will have some exciting events, I think, that you talked about coming back to our own event centre. So do you have anything, just as any closing comments, Roger?
Look, as I said before, if people are concerned about their event and want to talk it through, more than happy to meet with them and discuss their issues. If I don't know the answer, I've certainly got access to people that will. And I think it is, as I said earlier, planning's, that's probably the most necessary thing is planning early enough that you can address any issues that arise in the lead-up period. And I guess, we're probably again in that lucky position where we have got a time frame where we can, address a lot of these concerns that people are going to have, and put the necessary steps in place. So more than happy to speak to anyone that has got concerns and see if we can help.
Yep. So if you're going back to your rugby club or your soccer club or netball or just your car club or whatever, just take that extra time as if you're on that committee, just to give the place a bit of a spruce, bit of a wipe down, bit of a tidy up, and that'll make sure that you're doing your bit to make sure that all your members are well looked after, and we've beaten this COVID by the looks of it. But I still think that we can't be totally complacent yet.
I think that's the most essential thing. The last thing we want is, well, from our industry point of view, we don't want to be pinpointed as the start of a new outbreak. So, I think if you look at your event and have that same mindset where you don't want it to be, an outbreak, taken back to your event and doing whatever you can to stop that from happening. I think you've gone a long way to addressing it, but it's one of those things where you've got to look at it now and say, well, I've got a responsibility to look after the people that are coming into my venue. While there's no obvious risk out there of transmission, you've got to act as though it's still there, and what can I do to stop that from happening? Okay,
thank you very much, Roger, and we look forward to getting back to some of the fabulous events that happen at the event centre. Janice.
Thank you so much, Roger. That was really interesting, and thanks, Bevan, also. Thanks for all the sharing of knowledge and information for the benefit of the community. Thanks also to those of you who tuned in and for putting forward your questions. In a day's time, all attendees will be sent a survey link along with any key information from the webinar today. Also provided in that email will be a link to our Ashburton District Council webinar series, so you can watch this webinar and others from the series on demand. Thanks again, and well done to everyone for getting New Zealand to level 1. I hope to see you in person at an event in the near future. Bye now.